out your window, but you're welcome for not being robbed. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And, stupid adult hands, my name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Shazam!
Ooh, don't do that again, please.
Shazam!
No, just for a little bit further away from the mic.
Shazam!
Could you leave the room?
Shazam!
Like, walk out.
Shazam!
Even still too loud. Still too loud.
Hi,
yes.
everyone.
Welcome back.
That's the most movement in 208 episodes of this podcast that has ever happened.
I think we should turn this into an improv show, like with props and with like, not sight gags, audio gags, and like a full orchestral mix.
You kind of did that. You can check our Facebook page for the 360 video we did back in the day.
We do have another one of those that I just never put out.
Yeah,
but
we do.
It's a little bit too late now.
Yeah, we do.
Welcome back. You must be excited. And this is like the second Captain Marvel movie in about a month.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. So and I missed the first one, so I get Captain Marvel now.
Well,
I still haven't watched Captain Marvel yet.
That's kind of nuts. I mean,
really?
I guess they don't, in that $1 billion they made, they don't have your money.
No, yeah, it's $1 billion minus 15 for me. No, I haven't. And there's this thing, which is that I have, and it's not purposeful. Like I would totally watch Captain Marvel if it was in front of me. But when you're out of the loop, when you're not in that sort of zone of like, I must go see this to see this thing, I have no enthusiasm to go see that movie.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I loved it. I thought the film itself was really, really strong. I'm actually curious to see when you eventually see it.
Yeah.
Are you going to see it before Endgame?
I don't know. Like here's the thing. If it was on Netflix right now, I would totally watch it. Mm-hmm. To go to the movies right now seems like a lot of effort. Seems like a lot of effort for not a ton of reward.
The reward is an enjoyable film.
All
right. Hey, listen.
No, and my thing there is that there are just other films I want to see. Like other films I'm more excited to go. If I'm going to go to the movies to pay money to go see like right now if you told me Captain Marvel or Pet Sematary, I would pick Pet Sematary. Even though I don't think Pet Sematary is going to be a great movie, I would pick that.
I think that's silly. Carol Danvers doesn't need your money, Shahir.
No, yeah. If I could just give her that extra 15. Well, no, she made it over $1 billion without me, right?
Yeah, she did.
Also has a unicorn movie coming out on Netflix.
I want to see it. I wasn't too impressed by the trailer. I know you don't watch trailers.
I haven't watched the trailer,
but it's in Captain Marvel. Her and Samuel L. Jackson have a very good chemistry with one another. Okay, and Samuel L. Jackson's also in this film.
Yeah,
and it seems like something that Brie Larson has kind of wanted to do, like it's her own thing. So like I'm pumped for that.
Have you seen Short Term 12?
No.
Yeah, you should check out Short Term 12. That's where I first saw Brie Larson. I think that's when a lot of people first saw Brie Larson.
I first saw Brie Larson in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Ah, yes. So you're correct, yes.
Yeah,
I don't remember who she...
Envy Adams.
Which one is Envy Adams?
Envy Adams is the ex-girlfriend of Scott, who's in the band Clash at Demon Head, and is dating Brendan Routh.
Okay.
Dating Evil X number 3.
Okay. All right. Well, we will come back to Shazam / AKA Captain Marvel / is it got any other names in a second?
No. I mean, that's really it.
That's it? Okay. But I just wanted to recap a couple of... I'm going to do a tweet and an email and a text. Ooh.
Wow. A trifecta of social media?
Yeah, but I'm not going to give out my number. The text came from someone who I know personally.
So if you'd like to contact Shahir via text...
Yeah, it's 555-123-456.
All right.
78.
All right. What did your text friend say?
Okay, we'll go for the text first. This is from Brandon Ripley, who has actually been on the show before.
Yes.
He was on our American Honey episode.
What up, buddy?
He was just tweeting, he was texting me, and he said, I was listening on the podcast on Us, that is the Jordan Peele film that we reviewed last week, and I think you had a good point about not watching the trailer. I did watch the trailer that gives away the whole plot, and I think that seriously affected how I appreciated the film. I think you're onto something about not watching film trailers.
Did you just go through your texts and see whatever one that someone actually agreed with your ideology was?
Oh, that's how I cherry pick any argument on this podcast is basically, if you agree with me, I will guarantee you will be read out on this.
I do the same.
Yeah.
There's no difference there.
No, but I think we were. Did you end up seeing the full trailer for Us?
No, I saw the first one. I don't think I ever saw the second one.
You should watch the second one because I think that's the one that Brandon was talking about.
Yeah.
It does, and maybe it's a case that once once you've seen the film, you realize how much that film that trailer gives away. My other issue with that is that I think I have a very good visual memory. When I see something, I remember like the sequence of events, and it's probably because I'm an editor as well. So I just watched the trailer for Shazam with you, for example, and I would be frustrated if I saw that trailer and then I went and saw the film, because I think what happens is the trailer gives away moments, even if it doesn't give away the full reveals of everything that happens in that moment. I know the sort of building blocks about what's going to happen. So, for example, when the scene begins, I will know, oh, this image will eventually happen.
Yes,
and
I had a lot of that in Shazam. Yeah. But I will talk about how in this particular case, and not in all cases, of course, it did not bother me at all.
But, had you seen the trailer before?
Yes, I had seen the trailer for Shazam.
All right, so that's from Brandon. Yes, as we realize, I am not a trailer watcher. But,
that's all right. And I will read a tweet from Shayna, who got at us after our Finding Neverland episode. She wrote, "Thank you for tackling a difficult topic with grace and empathy. It's such a powerful documentary, and I'm glad people are talking about it." Well, no, thank you for writing in. That was a I don't want to say a difficult one to do, an important one to do. It was your first one back, which made it, I think,
Since we've had the conversation, how has your relationship to Michael Jackson changed? Has it at all, or has it changed?
I feel like it's pretty much stuck with. I mean, the relationship since watching the doc, and actually, the whole thing it hasn't lessened, or I should say, my non-relationship hasn't lessened, therefore grown. I stand by everything I said in the episode. Go back and listen to the Finding Neverland.
There's been a little...
Not Finding Neverland.
Leaving Neverland, which is... I've done that before as well. There has been a little bit of an update about Leaving Neverland, and that is one of... I think the director, Dan Reed, has jumped in on the conversation about the timing of some of the accusations as well. I think it comes down to... There's a shot... This is one of those things which is, I don't think this lessens the impact of the things that the two accusers, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, are saying, but it does. What happens in all these cases, and maybe what happens in American politics right now in general, is that if you can poke a hole in one little part of the story, it's enough for some people to say that the whole story is false. And in this case, there's been an accusation leveled at, I believe it's James Safechuck, saying something, I believe, and again, someone will correct me about the details of this at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at onlymoviepod. But the accusation there is that James Safechuck may have suggested that one of the instances of abuse in that film happened at the train station at the Neverland Ranch, but the date at which he says it came before the train station was actually built. And so that was look, hey, if you can poke a hole in a story, then that, here's the thing, and I don't think this is an illegitimate approach to rhetoric and argumentation in this case, which is that if you're going to level something at someone, every part of your claim needs to be true. And if it's not, while the majority of your claims might be true, it's enough for people to refute your claims. And that's what happens on cross-examination, on courtrooms, and all the time.
But I go back to the fact of, sure, but just open your eyes for a moment. Not you, I'm just saying society in general, and look at everything that sort of goes on in and around this story throughout its entirety. And a kid who is going through something, a level of abuse that's sort of intense and emotional and confusing, that gets a date wrong, or perhaps a place in the middle of a bunch of stuff. I don't care.
This is actually a really important part, and it's not a topic we've covered. It's a topic I've researched in researching a film that I was making, but there is quite a strong study about the way memories can be manufactured under duress, and children in particular are susceptible to manufacturing memories or creating memories that may not have happened. It's a very common phenomenon. There's a great film, I believe it's a Swedish or Dutch film by Thomas Vinterberg called The Hunt, which is really fantastic. It's about an accusation leveled at an adult that may or may not have been manufactured occurred accidentally. It is a very common phenomenon. I'm not suggesting at all that is what happened here.
Sure.
And I think, the point I think I made certainly in the Leaving Neverland episode is that I certainly believe Wade Robson and James Safechuck in this case. I just don't want to discount the notion, because what I'm watching is a documentary and not a definitive piece of evidence. I don't want to discount that I could be wrong. I believe them. I believe what they say is true. I believe, and this idea that the train station thing doesn't seem to poke a hole in it. But I don't want to discount the fact that I could be persuaded by the documentary and could be proven wrong.
Sure. It's just in my opinion too. And again, everyone has opinions. They're like that other part of your body where you can 100% be, you've heard the phrase, don't opinions are like assholes, everybody's got them. I'm in the same boat as you. I don't even like, if I'm basing my entirety of my opinion on, obviously the documentary stuff, but also just sort of the logic of situations in and around what was presented and the amount of people and sort of the history of it, I can't not think that. Anyway, we go back and listen to that episode. We won't get into it too much more here, but thank you so much, Shayna, for writing us in.
We've got one more email about Leaving Neverland that I'll just tack on here. This is from Kennedy. I think we both asked the question, what is your relationship to Michael Jackson in terms of his music on that episode? And this was a wonderful response from Kennedy, who wrote us in and say, I just wanted to respond to your question about listeners. I am 23, but I grew up with Michael Jackson's music my whole life. My household was pretty much all 70s and 80s music all the time. Madonna, Michael Jackson, and some hair bands I'm guessing those are the big, like Poison, Guns N' Roses, that sort of thing.
Kickstart my heart.
Yep. So I had a really deep love for Michael Jackson as a person and his music. My mom got me all of his music videos on DVD, shirts, vinyls. 23-year-old vinyls. There you go. The whole 9 yards. I heard about the allegations when I was young, but it was easy for me to blow them off and not to believe them. But now I can't imagine listening to his music without thinking about the documentary. It makes me really sad, like I lost a huge part of my life. That sounds super dramatic, but I have so many memories attached to his music. I learned his Thriller dance in my living room with friends, and we can still do every move to this day. I also sang Michael's songs at a school talent show and won. So it feels weird to just cut it all off, but I think it's necessary to the victims and their families. Anyway, those are my conflicted thoughts. Love you guys. Love you too, Kennedy. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think, this ever-going conversation that we've started with the art versus artist episode. Funnily enough, I see a lot of podcasts are doing art versus artist now as well.
Well. No.
Yeah, as single episodes. So and I think it's great. I think the interesting thing here is that it's easy to reject an artist when you don't like their art. It's much tougher to do it when you love their art or have a passionate relationship with their art. And I don't necessarily advocate for completely cutting their art out of your life. I think you can... this might be the wrong phrase of terminology, and this is ever-evolving train of thought in my brain, but I do believe in some part we can reject the artist and still appreciate the art. And I think that's a complicated thing to do. It requires nuance and a complexity of thought and an understanding of context. But I fundamentally believe at this stage, and I can be proven wrong. I think Michael Jackson was an interesting rhetorical complex issue for me. Is that you can reject the artist but still appreciate or acknowledge the art.
I think there's a difference between the two words you just used, appreciation and acknowledge.
I think the word I was avoiding using was celebrate. Celebrate
sure,
the art.
But for instance, appreciating the art, okay, you could get into the whole topic of like what is a piece of art without an artist? Like what people obviously, and let's just go down to straight up like paintings, right?
Yeah.
Like when you look at a painting, 9 times out of 10 you try to figure out what the artist was thinking or feeling.
Right.
So it's hard to appreciate art without appreciating the artist.
Right.
But acknowledging something is different. Look, no one can argue that Michael Jackson's music isn't good. I acknowledge that the music is good.
Right.
I will never appreciate Michael Jackson's music again.
Right.
So again, it's a little bit semantical, and we'll get, as you said, it's sort of ever evolving. Look, we're living in what film school Twitter has sort of dubbed sort of like cancel culture.
Yeah.
And is that possible or is it right? I don't know. And I think like what you said, one thing I particularly agree with is it's a nuanced issue. For me personally, due to my history with Michael Jackson's media and the story and what I've been presented, I can, quote, for myself, cancel Michael Jackson. Do I think the world can? No. And I think it's a deeply personal decision that you have to make based on what art you consume and whom makes it and what issues are important and affect you. And I don't think that there's a possible like everyone has to do this thing.
Right.
I just don't think that's feasible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I would. I'm just going to recommend one film as well, which I actually remembered this as I listened to the Velvet Buzzsaw episode that you guys did, and that is a documentary called "In the Realms of the Unreal: The Art of Henry Darger." Henry Darger, I think, was the primary influence for Velvet Buzzsaw because he was a janitor whose art, who when he died, people went into his apartment and found like screeds upon screeds of art that he had created, including novels, paintings, and they were all exhibited and kind of were the foundation of outsider art, which I think Velvet Buzzsaw is kind of really talking about.
And then they were painted with blood and they came alive?
Not quite, but they are deeply unsettling pieces of art. They involve a sort of troupe of young girls who get into all sorts of adventures which are deeply unsettling. And no one's exactly sure how to read these because
he's dead.
He's dead. Henry Darger died before any of this art was discovered, and there's no evidence that the art was a manifestation of real things that he had done, and they're incredibly imaginative, and people love his work. Henry Darger is all of his work is well published now. But I think the reason I mention it in relation to this art versus artist question is I think that it's a fascinating thing, which is that art isn't the artist. Art can be an extension of the internal mind in very different ways. Like if you, for example, equated Stanley Kubrick to A Clockwork Orange or Anthony Burgess to the world of A Clockwork Orange, you would equate them as violent, narcissistic people. But that's not necessarily what they were trying to do, and that's not necessarily who they are. So I think this is a very complex, nuanced issue, and I think the best way to do it, to approach this topic, is to look at it on a very individual case-by-case basis. I agree with what you said, which is that you have to make choices for yourself.
Yeah.
Those choices may not reflect what other people around you are doing.
In the case of the artist you just brought up,
Henry Darger,
yeah.
his artwork is incredible.
This is the thing. I would argue still, even just based off the thing, and I don't know anything about it other than what you just said, I would still argue that it still isn't possible. Though we don't know who the man was, or people don't know who the man was, all people want to do is figure out who the man was. Like, so it's that weird sort of sweet spot of like ignorance being bliss, because you're still in a nebulous form of either both appreciation and acknowledgement, because you physically can't. And that's like the sweet spot of like having your cake and eating it too, when you physically don't know.
Well, and then there's the postmodernist arguments about the death of the Roland Barthes articles, the death of the author, and the idea that the authorial intent doesn't matter in examining art. This is sorry, I've taken us down a real rabbit hole. If anything,
weren't we supposed to talk about a 14-year-old kid that turns into a Zachary Levi?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, sorry, this is what I do. At any rate, I think thank you again, Kennedy, for that email. Thank you also to Shayna and Brandon for
you went on a ride in your mind.
You know what it was? Is my stupid adult hands couldn't swipe up on my mouse pad enough to see it. But thank you all of those people for emailing us in. We love getting those emails in. So please email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod, and also hit us up on iTunes with the iTunes reviews, which are really helpful.
You can use your sparkle fingers yourself to give us 5 stars.
Yeah. What was the song that Shazam sings? I got lightning. What was he singing? What was he making a riff on?
Oh, I'll think of it by the end.
Lightning hands. I don't know.
Was it hands? lightning hands,
lightning hands, lightning hands. And we're back to Shazam.
Shahir, you didn't, and to be honest, I probably had a little bit of history, but you had zero connection whatsoever to this character.
I feel like I have seen Shazam when I was a little kid in cartoons somewhere, or probably in comic books. But, this whole Billy Batson mythology, how Shazam came to be Shazam, in my mind, Shazam was basically the precedent or the antecedent to Superman in some way. He was just sort of a different version of Superman. But I knew nothing about him. So if you have more knowledge of this topic, please fill me in.
The joke you said in the beginning of the episode is very accurate. Originally, and I'm gonna get the dates and stuff wrong. I don't think it's too important, but like the different companies before they were Marvel and DC, a company made a superhero called Captain Marvel, which is a very origin story, very similar to this. A kid finds a wizard, finds a magic word, becomes a superhero that's super powerful.
Yeah.
In fact, they made a movie out of it, and I was just reading how it was actually the first superhero film, even predating the Superman cartoon by 6 months.
There you go.
So it's been around for a while, but then as companies changed hands and properties moved around, so Marvel Comics became Marvel Comics and made their own Captain Marvel, and they said that, okay, listen, you can still call your character Captain Marvel, but you can't advertise it like you can't put Captain Marvel on the cover.
Okay.
And so they changed the name of the comic book to Shazam, which is the word he said, which stands for, and I didn't even know this.
Yeah.
And they say this, the wizard in the movie says this, it stands for like ancient heroes and gods that sort of, so it's Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury, and that's what spells Shazam. I didn't know that. I was like, that's pretty fun.
Yeah. Because it does sound like a name that you would think of if you were slightly high and just trying to think of a superhero name, and that was the first thing you wrote down.
And then just find gods that tie into it.
Yeah.
But then finally, DC, I think during their New 52 phase back in like 2006, 2007, redid all of their comics, and they just renamed the character to Shazam.
Okay.
And
so he was Captain Marvel until...
He was Captain Marvel for a while, and I might be getting my dates wrong, but I think it was sort of like in limbo for a bit. Like there's multiple spans of like 10 or 15 years where Captain Marvel on this side or Shazam comics just weren't printed.
No, you're right. And I'm just doing a quick wiki search right now, but he was renamed to Shazam in 2011.
Okay. Yeah, I forget when New 52 happened, but
yeah.
But
did you read Shazam? Did you know anything about Shazam?
I'd only seen Shazam in Justice League Unlimited, I think at that point. Always kind of an antithesis of Superman, but it's the Superman story of Superman was a kid. Like, right, and that's an interesting enough twist.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if I would be, apparently not because I didn't read them, but I wouldn't be really that interested in this comic if it was just a solo comic with Shazam. But I think much like Superman, characters like this are the best when they are paired with interesting people.
Right.
And that's something that I think the film manages to do sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know. What were your first thoughts of Shazam? We just walked out of the theater when the movie was finished. We just walked out of the theater.
I have to say, I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a backseat on this one because I am. How do I feel about? Okay, so let me tackle
negatively.
Let me tackle this about in 3 different roundabout ways before I get to the actual meat of what I want to say. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to just look at this as a film on itself. I don't know anything about Shazam. I don't know anything about the property or anything like that. I just want to see if I would just enjoy this film on its own merits, just walking in blind. Didn't watch the trailer.
I'm going to write down blind enjoyment, and we're going to put a check or an X next to it.
Right now, blind enjoyment for me personally was kind of a half check.
So a line?
Yeah, kind of a line, like neither positive nor negative. Like in so much as I didn't think this was a bad time at the movies.
How did you break my system instantly?
Instantly, that's what I do. It's nuance and complexity. That's what I do. If you tell me there's a left and a right, I'm going to go straight down the middle.
Okay.
But so in terms of blind enjoyment, here's what I think. I I think the movie really kicks into high gear once Zachary Levi turns up.
Is it Levi or Levi? I never get it right.
I'm not too sure.
I love him. He's he's one of my, honestly.
What was the spy show he was in?
Oh, Chuck.
Chuck, that's right, yeah.
He's one of my favorite actors that can pull off almost anything. I'm sorry to interrupt, but just while we're on the topic. He was just in Marvelous Miss Maisel as a very interesting character, in my opinion.
Yeah.
A shot of lifeblood that show's great, but like it was a different feeling and a different vibe of a character. The rest of the characters all feel like they've been written by the same person, and his sort of felt, I don't know, different.
Right.
I've loved everything he's done. His side projects that he's done.
What are the side projects?
He has a couple different sort of like I'm trying to remember the names of them. I'll look it up by the end. He has a couple different, like almost like I'll call them like nerd companies, a la the Nerdist or stuff like that he sort of runs and does cool animation projects. And I don't know, he's just always seemed like a really...
He seems delightful.
Yeah.
he seems like a delightful person.
He seems like he loves the role that he's in and changes himself just enough to get roles that he would also be interested in.
Okay.
And I don't know, he just seems like a super cool dude. And I've never met him personally. I know two people that have met him and worked with him, and they say he's a GD delight. So that's great.
Yeah.
And I wish him nothing but the best. So I was psyched when they cast him for this, because if you're gonna cast big, tall superhero dude that has the energy of a child.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, it's a very young Tom Hanksian role because, of course, it's riffing on the famous Tom Hanks film Big. And so on the one hand, I appreciated how much time this movie put into setting up its lore and its mythology up front. I have to say, I found that lore and mythology pretty dull and unconvincing,
right,
and kind of tedious in the way that nothing was particularly surprising or engaging about that lore and mythology.
Zachary Levi. It is Levi.
Okay, there you go. So I found all of that lore, it's basically the mythology of how Dr. Zavinda came about.
No, sorry, it's Levi. I'm reading like 9 different things. I'm so sorry. It said Levi, and I was like, oh, cool. Then it said, wait, Levi like the jeans. So cool, it's Levi.
Okay.
Sorry, Zach. I'm terrible.
Okay. So I enjoyed the fact that the film was taking a lot of time to set up the character and to set up the world before that character arrived. I did find all of that stuff to be sort of almost in a different tone of film than the film that eventually occurred when Zachary Levi, whatever turned, when Shazam eventually turns up. That's when the film kind of turns into comedy and turns into kind of a fun comedy, I kind of liked it. But my biggest issue with that was that the actor who played Billy Batson when he was young, even the character writing for Billy Batson when he was young, didn't feel like it lined up with the character that Zachary Levi was when he was older. I felt they were like the Billy Batson as a kid seemed very weighed down by the trauma of having been abandoned as a kid. The Zachary Levi character of Shazam felt very much in line with Freddy, like the sort of fun, goofy teenage character who's like, who's kind of had this sort of fun self-awareness. And I felt that those two characters never quite lined up in a way that made that connection make sense. And that for me was... I wondered if that was sort of a character trait that was true to who these characters were, but I don't think it was, because the film never made comment about how they were meant to be different people.
I actually thought they linked up okay.
Really? You didn't just hear me out here. The thing here was that the film that Billy Batson's the Asher Angel character kind of felt like it was a drama, right? Like a fairly dour, like he was traumatized. He was trying to find his way back to his mother. Whenever Freddy was talking to him, he was always the straight guy kind of thing. And then as soon as he snapped into Shazam, he was goofy, fun-loving, like bang, bada bing,
There's two things. There's two things there. One, there's multiple times where he's also that way when he's a kid. One, when I'm going to list them. One, when he was in the beginning, these are minor spoilers in the first 10 minutes, when he messes with the cops and steals the lunch and he does something, he's a sort of quirky thing there, whatever. The other one being when he's finally meeting the wizard and like there's like laughing and joking.
It feels
and
like it's
what?
one line though, right? Like
I mean, look, I think that throughout the weight of the emotional story, however much there is when he is younger, when he's a kid.
Yeah.
But also, I saw the same energy in certain moments that, I mean, granted, Zachary jacks it up, I think, as, to be honest, I feel like any kid who instantly gets basically a superhero mech suit, for lack of a better term, would be like it would be hard to be dour when that is the case.
For example, just take Big, the Tom Hanks film. The kid in Big kind of like when Tom Hanks, when he turns into Tom Hanks, I still feel like that's the kid. Like in Tom Hanks's body. And in this case, I felt like this was a different character.
And that never. I have some things that bother me in this movie. That wasn't one of them.
Okay, so I don't. Again, this is that sort of middle of the road thing, which is that it didn't destroy the film going experience for me. I just thought it was sort of a sort of unusually missed opportunity to have those two characters line up in a way that was sort of interesting, or even just felt like they line up. Like they didn't quite line up for me. I think the film kind of plays with this idea of creating a functional new family, which is sort of the foundational principle of things like Guardians of the Galaxy and what have you. And it sort of dances around this idea and it kind of like ties into it, but it doesn't really, for me, make that emotionally resonant in a way that would make the film kind of elevated beyond just like, oh, there's a couple of really cool ideas in here.
I would argue not the term dances around, because that sounds almost too elegant. I would say it stomps you in the face with it.
Right.
It's not nuanced.
Yeah.
And look, I'll be honest, there was one or two moments where I got an emotional pang in this movie. But they were immediately undercut by a weird edit choice or a line that felt out of place or whatever. So, like, it never let me have that moment of, like, things that I find, say, in, like, the Avengers films, where, like, I go on an emotional ride. Here I get sort of hit with, like, a pang or two of emotions here, there, sadness or joy or whatever. But it's not a smooth ride. I'll get jostled out by something else.
And I wonder if this has to do with like the DC universe trying to reconfigure itself after the Batman v Superman Justice League kind of thing, where they're trying to they still feel like they're trying to find the balance of like what are these movies? Like I haven't seen Aquaman at this point, which is the only one I think I've missed. But like. I think this is again, a sort of a recalibration where they're going, okay, we're not quite those movies. We're not quite Spider-Man, Homecoming, which is far more comedic. We're sort of somewhere, we're trying to calibrate this into something.
Here's the thing. I would say, A, they've already found their tone with Wonder Woman. They should stick with that. B, I'd say the I'm not going to say the quality of comedy. I will say the amount of comedy is about the same in Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, this is DC's Spider-Man in a weird way.
I would say, although I found Spider-Man to be much more engaging on a comedic level. And Thor Ragnarok, for example, as well.
I just think that, for instance, and I think that just comes down to filmcraft. I don't think that has to do with the universes anymore. Like we're just out of the grimdark Snyderverse. Like we get it that that's sort of not the norm anymore. What Shazam, where Shazam falters for me is I don't know if it's the editing or the actual directing of the scenes, or maybe some of the writing itself, because I think when two characters, for instance, when Zach and who plays Freddy, Jack Dylan Grazer, when they're sort of together, as Shazam and Freddy, it's a magical chemistry that felt like almost a little bit ad-libby, even if it wasn't. Like it felt natural, etc., etc. Sometimes when you had some of the other foster kids together, it felt the same way. With sort of big shout outs to the adorable I gotta find her name, the actress who played the really young daughter,
Darla Faith Herman.
Just there were moments where it really panged you, but then like the older daughter, everything with her, I kind of felt like that felt like Disney, like Disney Family Afternoons. Like it just felt very.
I wouldn't use the phrase Disney just because it's not. This is they're trying to figure out where this was in relation to Disney.
No. But I'm saying like, you ever watch ABC Family or like any of those sort of like any scene with her felt very like. Gonna solve this in a half hour, Full House sort of thing. Same with the parents, whom the actors, I love them as well. I think I saw it might be the writing, but then there were also parts that it's funny when you don't have a flow that lets you. I'll even use the analogy of like a film, and then let's not bring this to Aquaman, is a bit like surfing.
Okay.
you have to be able to not only get up on the board but stay on the board.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a better time and feel sort of like you're literally riding a wave or riding a sort of flow of energy of a story if you're not constantly being hit or there's things sort of like in your way as you're doing it.
Right.
Case in point, I thought the very beginning of the film when dealing with what's his name? Thaddeus's sort of backstory, the villain.
Right.
Was interesting, but was shot and constructed poorly. And by that I mean, so for instance, there's a scene where Thaddeus is a child and his brother and father are kind of being dicks to him in the car, and I'm like, this is shot like a 1-2 thing. The lines like is so mustache twirly and dumb, and I don't give a shit about anyone. And then he gets summoned by the wizard, and then almost gets corrupted, and then goes back and like freaks out, and then the car almost swerves, whatever, blah blah blah.
Right.
So then a second car comes out of nowhere that was not in conjunction with anything, even though it makes zero sense because it was lit enough, the thing, whatever. The car goes flipping on its side. The car that they were in flips and rolls on its side because it got T-boned and rolls.
Right.
It lands right side up.
Yeah.
But then the father is thrown through the windshield from a 90-degree angle, not the angle that the car hit.
Yeah.
And the second that I noticed all of those things and the fact that the filmmakers didn't care about that sort of continuity, I was like, oh, this is going to be all over this thing.
Yeah.
And those are the things where I know it seems small and petty, but when you add them all up, it's the things that get in the way of riding the wave of emotional enjoyment for me.
The thing there, I mean, I'm fairly forgiving of continuity and logic issues in films. I'm kind of fairly forgiving of those kinds, like mechanical logic. Not in
an action movie, though.
What I'm not forgiving of is the fact that the brother turns around in that scene and says, "This is your fault." This is
bad writing.
It's foreshadowing, bad writing. We know exactly. There's no subtext to the scene. It's all text, and that's the problem. Is it's all basically saying, "Hey, this is the bad guy." And this is who he's going to be, and this is why he's the bad guy. There's no subtext to the scene, and I think that's what kind of drives me a little. Like, in this case, I think maybe I've just to the point where, again, I don't think it's terrible. It's not like the worst subtextless scenes I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. It's just so. You know what I mean? It's
painfully average. It's like that's kind of what it is. Like you get it instantly. It's batting for the cheap seats, and it hits it.
Yeah.
But there's a level, like, again, you're making, no matter what they're saying they're doing or what sort of it is, it seems like they're making an action comedy or comedy action, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And the second you don't trust in your own action sequences to be like consistent with the physicality of where things should be, that also probably means you don't particularly care about, I don't know, maybe a sister knowing that the 7 sins are a thing when they give the speech about what has to happen to get the bad guy at the end when the sister's never been informed of that.
Right.
Like when you start letting little things, like 1 or 2 little things go, like threads go bare in the structure of your story and the way your story is being presented.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that gets me off your train.
So, and here's the thing that I think sort of, it doesn't drive me nuts, but I kind of feel like one of the things that these films tend to do, or these types of films tend to do, is they want to pull in all the intricacies of the mythology. So they want to do the story of Thaddeus up front. They want to do the story of Billy losing his mother so that they can pay that off later. And they want to do the story of like setting up Billy and his group home family and that relationship as well. So they're doing a lot of kind of different things. To me, the film would work best if we were just in the group home to begin with. Like if the film was just about him coming to this group home and kind of sitting up there and then spending all that time that they did with all those other stories and just building up those relationships in a sincere and honest way that can also be funny and entertaining and, and charming and all those things, then I think all the little payoffs later would be more fun. Like we would have more fun because ultimately the film's major payoff is that the entire and this is a spoiler.
We're getting into spoilers. What are we? We're about we're in spoiler time.
So the big spoiler for Shazam is that towards the end of the film, all the children in the group home become Shazam wizards or whatever they are. And I think that I actually kind of like that payoff.
I loved that.
I think it's great.
I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. I didn't know that was going to happen, and I think it was great. But I was like, wow, wouldn't this have been a really cool thing if I really cared about every single one of these characters and their interrelationship with Billy, and this idea that this film is about this family coming together and the reformation of that. I think it's kind of all sort of on the surface there, but there's no subtext to it. And the problem with having no subtext is that there feels like there's a lack of sincerity to that level of storytelling. And that again, it splits the film down the middle for me, which is that I think it's sort of.
Can you speak a little bit more to your term lack of sincerity in storytelling? Because I think you're saying a similar thing to me, but I wouldn't use those words, and I want to know why you...
So when I say lack of sincerity, what I mean there is that, and I think what I mean is sincerity means that they are digging for a truthfulness to those scenes. And it doesn't mean that it's drama. It means that it can be comedy. It can be fun. It can be light and that sort of thing.
But the scene is in the scene. Yeah,
but there's an underlying truth to it, and there's an underlying sense that is what the film is like driving towards. What it makes without that sort of sense of sincerity is it makes the film feel somewhat thematically bereft. Like there isn't a clear, strong sense of thematic resonance. And I'll point to a counterexample that I just rewatched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Right.
And that has got a clear, strong sense. Like every scene with the family feels clear and there's subtext to it and we understand the dynamics of it. And the film kind of lands towards this idea is that anyone can be Spider-Man. And it feels sincere and true, even though it's fun and entertaining.
Sure.
And I think that's the problem, is that this feels like it just has somewhat of a lack of sincerity to that, to making that storyline work.
The storyline you're discussing too is the sort of the finding your family. You can find your own family. You're not like, you don't have to be born into one.
I think
right?
Guardians of the Galaxy is a really good example of where there's a sincerity to the actual theme of what that film is about, and it plays it well.
So maybe then there's, I agree with that this is sort of lacking, and I think I latched on to the things that I had said sort of before about the small pieces that sort of knocked me off. But then I also think if in films like Guardians of the Galaxy, for instance, because and Into the Spider-Verse, the thematic, the theme is so strong and it is clear and it is present and you understand it entirely. Maybe there are one or two moments of missteppings that I found jarring in Shazam, but again, because the wave itself is so smooth, you don't notice the rocks underneath, depending.
It's a quality product, but it's whether that product has kind of like
high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah. It's a quality product.
Like, and okay. This is the weird. So when we were watching it, we were watching Shazam. I never. This is almost a contradicting of itself. I never was bored.
Yeah,
but I also was like, I wonder when this is going to end.
Yeah. I was never in the movie.
I never I was not like, oh, I want to get out of here. But I'm like, oh, this seems like an ending.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still. Oh, okay. Well, no, this is the end. This has to be.
Yeah.
Oh, they all are Shazam. No. Oh, this is the end. Oh, like it was a lot of that.
Yeah. And the worst case example I've ever had of that feeling, which is certainly not exactly the case that I had in this movie, is when I went to see Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Whoa.
That's a film where I was just like, I was never in the movie. I was always sitting on the outside watching it, going, "How is this movie happening?" And that I think is the worst case scenario of this. The best case scenario is when you're in something like Into the Spider-Verse, where you're like always just in the movie. You're like, you don't care when it's ending. You're just kind of like, I'm just in it. And this is sort of somewhere in the middle where, again, I was like you, never in this movie.
Yeah.
I was never engaged enough to really care about where the movie was going. It was just kind of happening in front of me.
Everything sort of felt a little too like it was a movie that should have made in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it felt in that respect,
like and tone. Like I'm not talking like there's a lot of I think the diversity in the film is great. I think that many characters, when they're sort of having their smaller moments, did great. But like every sort of antithesis in the film, be it the two bullies who hit the kid with the crutch with their truck and then like beat him up.
Right.
Like that felt straight out of the 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not how I mean, granted, the movie had other, but like the movie set up the world about the superhero stuff to be believable in the context of what it was going on. To me, those things, like the Bulk and Skull-esque bullshit that was going on with the bullies, felt the weirdest and out of place to me.
Yeah, you know, I think I said the same thing about It when it came out, you know, the Stephen King adaptation last year, which is like this sort of idea of bullies almost being murderous. You know, like when they just appear on screen for the first time, feels very much like an 80s trope that like that doesn't quite ring true anymore.
They literally kick Freddy in the ribs like 4 times. And
they also run him over with a car like at the beginning of the movie.
And I'm like, how are these fucks still like... Who's laughing and think like what and how are they not in juvie at this point? Like,
and the film doesn't do enough to build up like sort of the caricature of the world to make that believable, you know, like to make that sort of plausible. And that's that problem, which is that if you're not in the movie, you're not in the movie. You're not with these decisions. I will say, I do think the actor who plays Freddy is wonderful, and I think like you said, the relationship between Freddy and Billy as Shazam, I think, is really terrific. I feel like it's a different relationship when he's Billy the Kid. There you go. There you go.
You can have that one for free.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing I kind of wanted to point out, just talk about very briefly, is the director.
Okay.
At this point, David Sandberg. The only reason I was kind of curious to see this film was because of David Sandberg. Now, David Sandberg, for feature film watchers, he's made Annabelle Creations and a film called Lights Out. And Lights Out is a film I haven't seen yet, but I was very intrigued by because it's based off a short film that he made. And David Sandberg was one of these YouTubers that made a bunch of short films on YouTube that, like, in terms of virality, went big.
Right.
I think Lights Out, I don't know how many millions of views that is, but it was like, there was like a solid year where I got sent that film like at least 4 times.
Right.
And what was wonderful about him and the way that film was made, if you haven't seen it, Lights Out is like a 5-minute short horror film. He's also made like little 60-second horror films on YouTube. Is that they were all made completely on the cheap, but you saw the sense of like, here's a filmmaker that knows how to play with an audience.
There you go.
And he, off the basis of those short films, he was invited to Hollywood. Basically, James Wan and Blumhouse said, hey, why don't you do Annabelle Creations? So he got this jump into feature films, again, from doing these like, he didn't even do the classic filmmaker go to film festivals kind of thing. He was like
grabbed him
right off YouTube, he's a YouTube filmmaker.
There we go, baby.
And straight into the feature film world. Oh, he did an adaptation of his short first, Lights Out, and then Annabelle Creations, and then into this bigger film. And I think again, for the most part, other than the lack of sort of clear thematic sincerity, and the thing that thematic sincerity kind of points to me as well is like a clear sense of voice for the film. The film doesn't like have that real strong sense of voice, and that makes it feel somewhat like a product. A fairly enjoyable. It's not offensively bad. It's kind of middle of the road for me. Not hating on the film, but not like loving it. I think it kind of works, but it was like you just kind of hope that someone who gets swept up into this world like this can kind of give it a voice. And I think a couple of interesting examples. I think is Taika Waititi in Thor Ragnarok, which is like he's not giving it like the most important voice, but he's giving it. It's clear that this is a filmmaker who's made this film. You know what I mean?
Well, it's hard to jump from. I mean, your voice. If your voice is horror, and you're like, "Hey, be the 15-year-old superhero kid movie," and you're like, "Cool," like.
Well, it's just what it is I've seen this filmmaker wield little cameras and little machinery into something unique. And the tricky thing for a filmmaker like him is like, can you now wield this multi-million-dollar machine into your voice?
You know what's interesting? Now that we're talking about his career and sort of the horror things, stuff like that, there are small moments in this film when the horror stuff happens that really work. In particular, shots and movements with the magic doors.
Yeah.
There was one moment that like there was like a turn and a camera moved around and a door, like there's magic doors and they go different places, whatever. And it had a real uneasy, fucking cool as shit like look and vibe to it, and I was like, damn.
Yeah.
And but then I looked at like, for instance, the Seven Deadly Sins, who are part of Thaddeus's crew, and like the character designs for those felt uninspired.
Yeah, it was like it was hard to distinguish between them.
They felt like less interesting Doom monsters.
Yeah.
And like, look, they were, gluttony opened up big and was a mouth, and like,
there's a moment in the film where he's like describing them,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't know which one is which, apart from gluttony, which is the fat one.
Yeah.
And then when he says like lust, who I think was going to be way hotter, I was like, I don't know which one.
I
that looks
no
like.
clue.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I had no idea. Like, if you're gonna set up something like that, like, look, and I love Mark Strong.
Yeah.
Mark Strong, he chews scenery and everything, and I love him to death.
He can do bad guy like
Yeah.
very few people can.
Yeah, and he does fine with this.
Yeah.
But like, how cool would it have been to have the Seven Deadly Sins have a little personality?
Yeah, and if you saw like each of those personalities kind of play out, like in through him in some way.
Perfect example, and I know it'd be a little bit late in the film, but
Yeah.
like when they're all splintered off and they're fighting all the Shazams,
Yeah.
the family Shazams. It would be cool if like there were, maybe the director went back to his horror movie tropes and like they were attacking or messing with the Shazams in ways that were consistent with their trope.
Yeah.
Like
like if lust, maybe lust with the kids might be difficult.
that'd be
but, like,
hard, but I'd say like wrath or
Yeah.
greed.
You know what would make sense, for example, is the character who's and again, we're doing that thing which I say we shouldn't do, but we always do, which is fine. Which is like talking about the movie we want versus the movie we saw. But there was the son. I can't remember his name, but he's the one who's trying to get swole. But he's obviously got he's Jovan,
Yeah.
played by Pedro Pena. And like he's obviously got, I don't want to do body shaming, but he's obviously got a weight issue or something like that like is counterintuitive to who he becomes later. Shazam kind of becomes like this big muscular version. He points out, check out these guns. It would be interesting if gluttony was kind of combating him, and there was sort of like like you said, a connection between those two things that made
Sloth
sense.
for the kid who is obsessed with gaming.
Or sloth, yeah.
No, sloth could be like, for instance, like you're not moving forward. Like there's lots of ways you could play. The Seven Deadly Sins are like, with Beyond
movie, The
Seven,
yeah.
but like you can do stuff with that's easily character baked in that you don't need to. You just need to play with the theme.
Yeah.
Like you're not creating a thing.
Yeah.
You're just doing a very primal thing.
You're doing storytelling.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
So there's that. Let's as we're sort of going
Yeah.
through here, the last thing I wanted to go back to was the discussion of trailers.
Okay.
And so this movie falls into a very particular style or grouping of film where you are 100% right. I knew what was going to happen with the bus.
Yeah.
I knew that he was going to jump off the roof and have that cool shot and fly away.
Yeah.
I knew that he trained and he had all that, I've seen the funny parts in the movie, etc.
Yeah.
Here, and this is going to be I'm going to backtrack a little bit, but here I didn't care.
Right.
Because truth be told,
Yeah.
in these kinds of movies, we know no one on the bus is going to die.
Yeah.
We know, that like these moments that we're seeing are sort of baked into sort of the culture of it. And so I didn't particularly care. I knew that Mark Strong was the villain. I had no idea in the trailer what his story was. Now, granted, it's not a great story, but it wasn't spoiled for me.
Yeah.
The plot of Shazam was not spoiled for me. Was the plot of Shazam great? No.
Yeah.
But the trailer didn't ruin that.
Right.
Now, that's not to say, again, I've mentioned this before, and I will mention it many times again. Terminator 2 is the ultimate problem in trailer things from way back in the day when they revealed in the trailer that Arnold was actually good. That would have been such an amazing moment in the theater for people to be like, oh!
Yeah.
And what I liked about this, and I could picture maybe a lesser trailer company doing this, but like they didn't ruin the multiple Shazams. Like that was something, again, in a very formulaic film, which this kind of is, that was a moment of actual surprise for me.
So I think what you're talking about there is a feeling I have sometimes, which is that, I tend to avoid trailers, or I'll just watch like 30 seconds of a trailer or something like that just to get the flavor of it. But if it's a film that I'm not really that keen to see, and I kind of know intrinsically that I'm not going to go watch it, I don't mind watching the trailer. But the reason I do that is that I go, well, the trailer's probably going to give me all I need to get out of this movie anyway. So I'll just watch the trailer, and then I won't need to see the movie.
And I can totally see that.
That's kind of where I, like, the reason I didn't watch the trailer for this is that I knew you wanted to see this movie for the podcast.
Right.
But to be honest with you, if this movie had come and gone and, we hadn't been doing it, and like maybe 2 months from now, I would probably go, I'll just watch the trailer and I'll kind of get what I need to get out of this movie.
And you know what I like about, I feel like trailer companies for these styles of films are a little bit learning. Like, I want to go back to The Bus. We see he shoots the lightning, he hits the bus, and there's the whole line of like, you almost killed those people in the bus and whatever, but I caught it. Yeah. Like, that's the whole joke. Yeah. But there's also great moments between it, particularly, and it was a throwaway joke, but I liked it, like big dramatic catch, and then he has to put the bus down, and there's just a dog.
Yeah.
And I was like, I loved that wasn't in the trailer. They always had a small thing. Something I admire Marvel trailers for incredibly, especially in this like real hyper, like don't spoil anything for Endgame sort of thing.
Yeah.
They purposely put in scenes and put characters in spots that they won't be.
Right.
And that's a great tool because you get the sort of feeling, like case in point. Well, actually, I don't want to ruin it because you haven't watched the trailer.
I haven't watched any trailers for Endgame.
But there's a moment in one of the last Endgame trailers where I was like, oh, I'm surprised they showed that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but it was a moment that I was like, well, I knew this moment was going to happen, so I don't care.
Right.
They never do a thing where they show me something where I'm like, oh.
I for you, I would have loved it if we could have made a bit or something like that, or some kind of deal where you didn't watch any trailers for Endgame. Because I really genuinely think you would, when you watched Endgame, you would have such a great experience.
I'm gonna have a great experience anyway.
No, but you know what I mean? Like if you didn't know anything about Endgame, and if you just walked in and go, let
Sure.
every moment happen to me as it's gonna happen. I just think you would have, you in particular, would have such a great experience.
And I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I equate it to how do I put it? What's the putting insurance on bets? At a game at a blackjack table or something like that. Like you can always put down like a little bit and you can like opt out or like whatever. Yeah. That's sort of what trailer watching in that particular thing is for me.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. I think everything for Endgame looks great.
Yeah.
I stand on my statement. If Endgame doesn't deliver the ending, the whole house of cards comes tumbling down.
It's not even that though. It's just that I think it's that thing where if you have more opportunity to be in the movie as opposed to to be connecting pieces.
I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree, but I'm straight up telling you I'm gonna be in it anyway.
Yeah, I get that.
Anyway,
look here's just before we go out. This is the in the past, I have been much harsher about superhero movies in particular, and these kinds of movies. And I think maybe I've just been beaten down to the point where I've just got other. What I think has been cool is that I haven't personally been inundated with superhero films. I haven't watched Aquaman. I haven't watched Captain Marvel. This is the first one I've seen in a while. And I thought Spider-Man was great. Into the Spider-Verse was great. But there was a sort of an argument that I felt that I was trying to make about all of those films, which had to do with the sameness of it all. And I have to admit, I think Shazam is a little bit samey, but it's not offensively. It's nowhere near offensively bad or anything like that, and it's not so samey that I'm kind of like drawn away from it. But there was an interesting article that has been shared around this week that I thought was really interesting. It's called On Flooding, Drowning in the Culture of Sameness. And it's written by Soraya Roberts, who's a columnist at Long Reads. It's a really terrific article. You should hunt it down. It makes sort of a compelling argument for basically the idea that the diversity of choice that we think we're being offered by, Netflix, Amazon, going to the movies and all that sort of thing is ultimately coming down to it's much less choice than we think it is, because our choices are being programmed algorithmically, and that is and basically the programming there is, oh, you like this thing, therefore you will like this thing, as opposed to trying to find a diversity of material. And there's one quote from this article that I think is interesting. We are increasingly consuming the same books, the same movies, the same shows. In A Human's Guide to Machine Intelligence, Kartik Hossanger reports that a third of the product choices at Amazon are driven by algorithms, while at Netflix it's around 80%, which makes sense if you've ever actually tried to search for literally anything on that platform. These algorithms are taste reflectors, which means they don't affect the way taste the way critics do, but simply reinforce your palate. There's little discovery here. And how much of this discovery can be really, really had when the same critics occupying the same space? What starts out optimistically, i.e. Black Panther's success proving a viability of a superhero with a not entirely white cast and a future of more inclusive storytelling, becomes a reshuffle of the same ideas, more diversity and more superhero movies, more movies with Chadwick Boseman, and more movies by Ryan Coogler, instead of actually systemic shifts towards a more varied storytelling by more varied storytellers.
Yes, 100%. But that's how it's always been. This is just like almost like a weaponized version of that. Because, like, look, people forever, like, films have sort of done this forever. Jurassic Park was a huge hit, so you get a bunch of like things that are sort of similar. You know, like they always go for the star or the theme or the style, and they redo it. That's what they've done forever.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think what the reason I point out this article and I point out this point is that I think our role as cultural commentators is to discuss that idea and to bring it up when we get confronted with a piece of media that is ultimately, you know, like, while I didn't dislike Shazam, there's sort of little, it's a, you know, like, it's very hard for me to get excited or to tell people excitedly to go see it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I got that.
And the other reason I brought this up is that the other night, for the first time in a while, I rewatched Mad Max Fury Road, which was, which in itself is the fourth sequel in a franchise. But the question that I kind of wondered as I watched Mad Max Fury Road was like, man, this movie was such a shot in the arm. It's such a sort of incredible, just piece of storytelling, so muscular, so energetic, so lively. And I was like, what films have come out since 2015 that feel like this? And I kind of wondered about that question. And I wondered about, like, where, like, how films should give us a charge to the sense to one-up each other. And I just wondered where that had been. And again, I'm not leveling the entire cultural commentary about filmmaking as a societal normality at Shazam. Like, Shazam is Shazam. I'm just saying it's an interesting thing for us to have a conversation about around this movie.
Sure. It's funny. I think as far as sort of like people trying to one-up or do similar things, I think something like Mad Max Fury Road is such a difficult film to pull off that I feel like that's probably why. Like, it's easier to pull off a competent superhero film in this day and age based on all of the data that we have, like that you just said, than it would be to pull off a Mad Max-esque film that had the same emotional relevance or popularity. Like, it's like superhero stuff is a little bit low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah, and it's just, and again, this is not leveled at superhero films.
No, but it's easy. It's an easier trope to be successful at than a Mad Max would be.
It's just that when I watched Mad Max, I was like, oh my God, every moment in this film is so vital. Mm-hmm. It's such it's such a rush of pure cinematic filmmaking.
And then going back to your algorithm stuff about Netflix and all that jazz, something that they're doing interestingly, and I bet you dollars to donuts that they are 100% doing this. Have you watched any of Love, Death, and Robots?
Yes, I've seen the idea that they're giving you different
episode orders,
sequencing orders,
and I don't think it's random. I think they look at your preference. I bet you they have like different stats for every episode. Is it whimsy? Is it violence? Is it sexuality? Is it whatever? And they look at your history, and I guarantee you that the first one that they show you has something to do with what you've watched before.
One thing we never talked about with Bandersnatch was, I guess, the Nietzschean quote, which is that when you stare into the abyss steers back, is the fact that what's important about Bandersnatch isn't the choices you make. It's about the collective data that Netflix is gathering based on the choices you make. So what Netflix is collecting there isn't just oh, the story went in this direction. It's like, what does this person, what are they likely to do in this scenario?
Are you saying the void is us?
I'm saying the void is watching us back.
Right, but the void is also us.
Yeah, and we if there's anything to be leveled at this conversation about consumerism, superheroes, fatigue, sameness, and all that sort of stuff, it has to be leveled at us, which is that we still consume it, we still get mildly, we still buy it. And that is the world we live in. It is.
And I personally don't have a problem with it as long as we acknowledge it and we do see other things when we want to.
And with that in mind, I am making it difficult for our listeners next week.
Talk about this before we say goodbye.
I'm going to make it difficult for our listeners this week, but it is in the spirit of the conversation that we're having right now that I really wanted to push us to do this, is that Terry Gilliam's new film, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, is playing for one night and one night only in New York City and I think around the country, around the United States. And that is the film we're going to review. So we're going to ultimately review a film that I know most of our listeners probably won't have gotten to or gotten a chance to go see.
You better order us tickets now, because you think it won't sell out. If it's one showing in New York, it's going to sell out.
That's true. But the point there is that I want us, even if that film is going to be bad, which I've heard by all accounts it's not very good, I want the challenge of going to see something that you can't get anywhere else. I want the challenge of of going to something which only exists for a small moment in time.
You heard it here first. Shahir wants to do an episode where you can't see the movie,
but you can hear us talk about it next week.
Fine. Anyway, I hope that's true. After this, let's look at tickets, because I don't want to promise people things and then not be able to do it.
That's true. As soon as I do it, it's sold out. I was like,
fuck. Yeah. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about the film Shazam!
Further away.
I'm not running again. Shahir, when you are not, acquiring a wizard staff for yourself, where can folks find you?
You can touch my staff at my website, shahirdaud.com. Matt, when you are not, you're actually wearing the Shazam colors right now, the sort of red, and you're kind of, you're looking a little swole. So when you are not... basically metamorphosizing your 14-year-old brain into your adult body, where can people find you?
You can find all of my Arrested Development at matthewkrol.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, and Emperor, MSK on Twitter. People have told me to slow that down because they can't understand it when I say it fast. And that's true because I talk way too quick. Also, check out all of the good works we're doing over at Extra Credits. I believe by the time this launches, we'll have gotten into on Extra History, the Siege of Vienna.
Yep.
And also we just had our April Fool's episode for Extra Credits for games you might not have tried. Please look at that episode. It was so much fun to make, and it was super fun, and there's a funny little song at the end. Anyway, yeah, I guess next week we'll be fighting windmills. If you order the ticket, are you doing it now?
I'm doing it right now.
Tell me. We're gonna keep going until the tickets are ordered.
Okay. So I'm just logging into my Fandango.
Log into the Fandango. Also, if you'd like to get in touch with us, if you've seen Shazam or you want to touch base with us on any of the topics that we've discussed in this episode, please email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at onlymoviepod. Also, iTunes reviews. We need them. We thirst for them like the 7 deadly sins thirst for the power of Shazam. And I guess in this case we would be gluttony, or greed. We'd be a combo of greed and gluttony for your stars. So if you could give us as many as you could spare, 5 being the best, we would absolutely appreciate it. What do we got, Shahir?
We got 2 tickets to see The Man Who Killed Don Quixote.
Bam! Yeah! All right, so now you know it's official. I'm glad you were here for that emotional journey of my stalling and Shahir ordering tickets. So with that in mind, we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.